Welcome to Sports Close-Up Show. Today is our local high school preview and local small college preview. To my left is an all-star panel. Immediate to my left, Josh Svetz, who's doing an internship with the Meadville Tribune and also attends St. Bonaventure College, Meadville graduate. To his left, the Dean of Play-by-Play Announcing in Crawford County, Chuck Stopp. To his left, Luke Rio, who does just about everything out in Titusville, including the morning show called The Morning Drill. To his left, Ray Rostoff, play-by-play man of Allegheny College, Meadville Bulldogs in the past, now doing the play-by-play for the for McDowell Trojans out of Erie. And to his left, the SID of Allegheny College, my co-host Jim Berger. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Mike.
These guys sound a lot more impressive than me.
I'm just looking at the whole group here. I think next year we might have to get a female or two. I don't want people to think that we don't value their opinion when it comes to athletics, but we do. We're going to talk about local high school football, and since we're going to talk about local high school football, I'm going to delve into the Meadville Bulldogs this year, because I think the Meadville Bulldogs had the best three running backs in District 10, period. And those three are Journey Brown, Isaiah Manning, and Antonio Ferraro. I don't think there's a better three on one team anywhere in District 10 or in northwestern Pennsylvania. I think Journey Brown could be the premier back of northwestern Pennsylvania. The young man is fabulous. He also won a gold medal in running and track this year. When he gets to the outside, he's gone. I think Meadville this year is going to be an exciting team. I look at their schedule. They have a tough schedule, probably the toughest schedule they've had in years. They open up with Central Tech Friday, August 26th, which is Friday night of Fair Week. That is the first game, as Chuck knows already, too, of local high school football. Then they go to McLean. They have Du Bois at home. Du Bois was a 106-90 game last year that made national news. The Du Bois quarterback was only a freshman. He will return. And if you want to check out one football game, get to Bender Field on Friday, September 9th, because that young man's only going to be a sophomore, and this young man can throw the ball all over the field. Then they host Warren. They go to Cache. They go to Farrell. They host Franklin. They go to Oil City. They go to Grove City. Their last game is home against Greenville, which probably will not be played because that is the 10th game, and that is when playoffs will start in District 10 or PIAA playoffs throughout the whole state this year. They moved up the playoffs since everybody's in. Sort of like everybody gets a trophy type of thing. Some schools have decided not to be in. We talked to John Ackland. If a team is not 500, Cache will not send any team to the playoffs. I kind of like that, what Cache has put in, but that's up to each school. So the playoffs should be exciting also, but I think Meadville will be one of the most exciting teams this year. I know it's early, fans. Reports I'm getting is they're throwing the ball all over the field in camp. Okay, we've heard that a lot the last couple of years, but they did add a couple new assistants. A young man, Brian Ford, is back, who's coaching the quarterbacks and knows a lot about throwing the football. And they have a young man out of college who is helping with the secondary, and he knows a lot about the passing game also. Coach Collins is ecstatic. He's trying to replace some top losses on the offensive line, but defensively they returned 7 starters, and most of those starters were ones that made the tackles last year, although that's an area Meadville needs to improve in. They're tackling and playing better defense. I think Isaiah Manning, one of their linebackers, my personal opinion is, could be the best linebacker to come out of Meadville High School football, period. This young man will be a junior, and he runs through people. When he tackles people, he's gotten much bigger. Got to see him in the weight room last week. There's a lot of excitement down there. I think Coach Ray Collins has done a great job. 3 seasons, and he's 12-10. And he's done a good job of getting the program back on track. So I think Meadville could be an exciting team. Got to make a plug for our radio station, 1490 WMGW. We'll be carrying the Bulldogs again, and you can listen to them also on the net at forevernorthwestpa.com. That's forevernorthwestpa.com. There'll be a link there. You can listen to the games because sometimes 1490, if you drive 3 blocks out of Meadville, you can't get it. So hopefully you can tune into the games that way. So the Bulldogs have a lot of excitement. And I'm going to go right to my good friend Luke Rio about Titusville, because Titusville's been down, but now they're in a different region, and that's got to help the Rockets.
It does and it doesn't. You're still talking about competitive teams this year. You know, some of those teams that you mentioned with the Meadville's playing, the Oil Cities, Grove Cities, Franklins, those are the teams we've been playing the last couple years. Yep. Tough teams. This year, there's excitement, but also that hesitation that, you know, we can compete, but it's not going to be easy. We kick off the season with Cambridge Springs at Carter Field. Brand new scoreboard this year, so we're excited.
Nice.
They've got Fairview, Mercyhurst Prep, Harbor Creek, Conneaut, Ohio this year. Warren, we play them every year. Corey, we have them every year. Girard's new, and that 10th game, of course, pending playoffs, would be against Franklin. So, again, I think a competitive schedule, but still, you want to be careful going into these games because you're playing some pretty good teams.
And Luke, their first game is at home, and who do they play their first Friday?
Cambridge Springs.
Home?
Home.
And that's the Friday of Fair Week also, and that should be an exciting game down at the launch pad. They call that the launch pad?
Yeah, the launch pad. Yeah, we'll be down there this year. You know, the Rockets were 1-9 last season. Right. Ended the season with a win against Maplewood. Exciting game. You talk about two teams that were pretty evenly matched. I think Maplewood a little disappointed. They were going into the playoffs, and here comes Titusville. They end up beating them. So, not an exciting way to enter the playoffs with a loss. But I think Coach Hancock's looking for a little bit more of a competitive edge this year, and we'll see what happens. You know, it always comes down, at least the last couple of years with the Rockets, we've got a lot of youth. We don't have a ton of big guys. You know, just looking at some of the different weights from last year, you know, 135, 140, 160. You know, there's a few that enter the 200 plus, and there's even fewer that go 225 plus. You know, we're playing teams where you've got a lot of 200 plus players on there. You know, that's a lot of work for these guys, and they hang in there pretty well during the first half. They get pretty tired in that second half. So we'll see what happens this year and see, you know, how they match up against some of these other schools.
Coach Hancock trying to revive that program that was once a proud program. 25 years ago in the Northwest Conference, Titusville was one of the teams you had to beat to win that conference. That was a great conference back then, and that's why they continue to play Warren. That was a conference of Titusville, Meadville, Greenville, Warren, Oil City, Franklin. That was and back then those teams could beat anybody on any given day.
And you still hear those stories.
Oh, yeah.
You walk into the broadcast booth and people say, "Hey, you remember 1954? This is what happened," or 1983.
Yeah, and I remember too coaching back then in Meadville, where they used to have both teams on the same sideline, and sometimes in the middle of that game, you had more action on the sideline than you did on the field between coaches and players. Chuck, many people think Cash is going to take a big step back, but I think they have one thing going for them. They got Pat Gould on that sideline.
That's exactly what I was going to say when we started talking. They lost 6 on the offensive line, another 8 on the defensive line. Of course, they go both ways for the most part. But yeah, if anybody can do it, Pat Gould can step up, and they're going to be decent. I don't think they're going to get blown out in many games. But yeah, it'll be a step down. What, of course, that crew that they had there, you cannot replace Hunter Merritt, quarterback, and Joey Litwin, wide out. I mean, they just had phenomenal careers and set all kinds of records.
I know the Meadville fans are happy to see them leave.
I'm sure they are. If it's a year that the Dogs, with all the running backs they got, if Meadville can play some defense, this is probably the year that they can get Conneaut. They've lost 4 years in a row.
They have not beaten Conneaut yet, and that's been their bugaboo. They did Conneaut a good game for about 3 quarters last year, and Conneaut pulled away. Hunter Merritt, to me, was the MVP of that program the last few years, Chuck. He engineered that great win over Prep in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Where's he going to school?
He is going to be going to Mercyhurst.
Playing football.
Yep, and Joey Litwin's going to Slippery Rock.
Yeah, and there's a few others from that program that have gone on to play football locally.
They have.
I think they have a couple other players at Slippery Rock, if I'm not mistaken. And Pat Gould's done a great job. I know one thing Pat Gould does, a lot of coaches take time off when the season's over. His kids start lifting weights at the last week of November, and they go in the morning. And they are in there 6 o'clock in the morning lifting weights from the last week of November until camp starts, if I'm not mistaken. He is the man in charge of that program, and that school came together. One thing Pat Gould did very well is he had the kids compete from 3 schools, and he kind of brought the whole community together, Chuck.
And since they've been combined, you know, even that first year they competed. And then, of course, 2 years ago, winning District 10, knocking off Cathedral Prep, couldn't happen to a better team. and that was a big, that'll never be forgotten. That'll be talked about forever.
And no question about it. And you had fans from all over Erie and Crawford County and Mercer County cheering for Cash.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing.
All the fans were there. There might have been 10% for Cathedral Prep.
All the public schools were there.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have anything on Cochraton this year you want to share with us? They also have a good coach down there that came from Cash.
Yeah, exactly. Liberty over there, he's done a really good job at reviving that football program. This is a team that was extremely young last year. They're getting most of their top guys back. It's just a team that's in a good position, especially with Eisenhower looking like they'll take a step back, losing their top quarterback Head. It's going to be between Maplewood and Cochrane for that last playoff spot, and Cochrane right now I think has a little bit of that edge there in terms of just talent coming back.
You know, Cochrane to me is amazing. They graduate anywhere from 50 to 60 students, that boys and girls combined, and they're able to put a team on every year that's very competitive. And Nate Liberty's done a great job there. As I said, he's a disciple from Pat Gould. He was once Pat Gould's staff for a few years, and I know his dad's an outstanding coach down in the Pittsburgh area, Nate Liberty's dad.
He also coached in Titusville.
Yes.
Which was another part of the excitement for this year, looking at these teams, is you've got the Titusville connection in Cochranton. You had until I think wintertime or spring, you had Mr. Funk coaching up at Girard. We were excited by that, and he stepped down. I think he's still playing somewhat of a role with Girard behind the scenes, but yeah, a couple Titusville connections, which again made this matchup a little bit more exciting.
You know, you talk about coaching changes. One thing I'm going to throw out is Oil City. Their coach, who was a fabulous coach, and Ray can talk about him because he developed quarterbacks at Oil City that threw the ball all over the field on a positive way. He stepped down to go into administration at Oil City, and their coach they brought in from Lakeview. And what the Meadville coaches have said right now, it's going to be a little bit easier because he likes to run the football like Meadville does. He doesn't throw as much. He might throw it 3 or 4 times a game, looking at his past history at Lakeview. So I think Oil City might take a little bit of a step back this year in their conference with a new coach and a new style of play. Chuck, you got to see him at Lakeview. What can you say about the coach?
Very good.
Yeah.
I think they all respect him. And when you have a team that respects the coaches, well, you're going to get a lot out of them. And that's the same case there in Conneaut.
Right.
Coach Pat Gould.
No question. Ray, you're down there with the McDowell Trojans last year. I tell you what, you talk about a schedule, Ray. McDowell plays a schedule, and they're the only 6A team in the Northwestern PA, correct?
Yeah, in District 10 right now, they'll be the only 6A team after the entire reconfiguration with the PIAA expanding to the 6 classification system. They were a little bit disappointed, and we were actually talking about this off the air, a group of us here, about, and I think a lot of teams were. When the PIAA was going to go to 6 classifications, there was a consensus that they weren't going to, at least District 10 wasn't going to keep teams in regions like they have, that they were going to let them go back to conferences. That didn't happen, so McDowell didn't quite get to add some of those power Ohio teams like they've done in the past. They do open with Warren Howland. They do play Austintown Fitch at home, a team that they played and got shut out by last year on the road in the Youngstown area. And another non-conference team they added is in the state of Pennsylvania. They added Hollidaysburg, which is another 6A school. So they are keeping some of those powerhouse teams on the schedule because, let's face it, when they get out of District 10, which they're back to doing that automatically now because they're the only 6A team, you got to get through. Normally they don't have a problem with the Pittsburgh City League champion, usually whether it's Brashear or Taylor Alderdice. Then you get into a situation where you play State College, more than likely in another sub-regional. But the interesting plot twist this year is if McDowell gets past the first sub-regional, they have to play either the District 2 or the District 4 champ from the eastern part of the state before they would meet up if they progressed in the playoffs with the number 1 seed out of the Whitfield.
Tell us about the talent, McDowell, because I know they got some big horses down there, and quarterback-wise and defense and offense.
It's taken Coach Orlando a couple of years to get his offensive system in place, and if anyone's familiar with it, it's a little bit similar to Conneaut's. They might throw the ball a little bit more. It can be a 50-50. I mean, he stresses balance. There will probably be a little bit more passing this year because Levi Becker is a top-end prospect. He's your prototypical, 6'2", mid 200 pounds, has a cannon for an arm. Had a great year last year after he struggled in the early part of the year taking over the offense for his first full season. He ended up breaking the team record and throwing 20 touchdown passes, which broke the McDowell High School team record. He's got some good wide receivers to throw to. They got some big boys on both lines. They have a lot of experience coming back this year, and I think they'll be one of the top teams in the area.
Looking at the teams in Erie, Ray, what have you heard about Prep? They just reload every year.
Well, and they went to the Corey 7-on-7 passing camp, and it wasn't necessarily that part that people were talking about. It was the lineman competition, and they just demolished people down there. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, they'll probably again be a playoff contender like they are every year.
Well, that's the reason why everybody bolted from Prep. The only team in Prep's region right now for playoffs is Warren. Warren's the only team that didn't leave. So right now, as we talk, Warren and Prep will play for the District 10 championship.
It makes 5A kind of fun, and you were talking back and forth with Chuck about it. And really, I think when you break it down, when you look at the favorites, I would put. I'm never going to bet against a Pat Gould team. I know that they're technically rebuilding, but I'm putting them in the mix. I'm putting Meadville in the mix, and then you got General McLean there too.
Oh, yeah.
They lost some talent from last year, but Ethan Laird, who's going to take over at quarterback for Kyle Salt, actually got reps last year. There were times where they would take, and I saw General McLean play a couple of times last year, they would take Salt out of the game, and Laird would come in and spell him just to get him some rest. So he's going to have experience, and that's another program where, similar to Conneaut, how Conneaut's been built the last couple of years, where everybody knows their system coming up through the ranks, and they reload every year. And I think that'll be the case again.
I agree, and let's not count out Franklin. They surprised everybody winning that playoff game up there last year, and that was a big win for Franklin. And they're well coached too. Oil City, new coach, and Grove City. People tell me Grove City is going to be a lot better this year than they have been. They were young the last couple of years. So, yeah, the region will be a real interesting region depending on how people start the season. But I just, I give credit. Those coaches and ADs got together and said, we're moving up. We're tired of playing a team that can recruit. And I give them credit. Cash and Meadville and Oil City, Franklin, they all said, see ya. And Warren, for some reason, didn't want to go, but they might go. They're going to have to stay for 2 years. But I wonder if the PIAA guys will try to. Can they stop teams from doing that down the road? What do you guys think?
I don't think they can.
No, I think they'd
If
be
you want
going
to
to
go up, you
court,
can
right?
go up. Of course, you can't go down. You can always go up. So
Yeah. So maybe
don't
I
think
wonder
they'll
if Prep
change it.
will move up after 2 years, volunteer to go up. Then everybody
they'll drop down.
Can you move down?
Well, they went up from 4, so they're originally a 4 anyway.
No, but I mean, can teams go down if Prep moved up?
I think they can.
That'd be
As long as
interesting to
it's
see.
not.
I think you're going to continue to see these type of strategic moves by teams, especially with all the new science and head injuries and football numbers dropping, and I'm not real familiar with it, but I've heard people talk about that. They say in the past, in the 80s, they tried to get the PIAA to separate it. I know it's a hot button issue that draws emotions out of both sides. It could be something potentially that would be, I think, healthy for the sport overall to be looked into again. Whether it would happen or not, I don't know. I don't know where it would have to come from to begin the process of doing something like that. But again, you will get loud voices no matter what side of the fence you're on from both sides.
And I wonder how much it is going on. I know it's a big issue here in District 10 with Prep and everything. I wonder if it's going on in other parts of the state. I know in the eastern part there's a ton of private schools like that in every sport. I wonder if they're trying to separate them a little more like that, or if more of the teams are going, because I know in the Whippy, I have a lot of, know a lot of people down there. It seems like all the moves are made strictly on size. There is none of that, getting out of this team's conference or being more geographical. I just wonder how much of the private school, I guess, gerrymandering, if you will, is being done over on other sides of the state, or if it's more a unique issue here.
Well, I think the real problem is in other states you have more of those schools that get to recruit players, and here it's Prep and, Cash kind of, because they have such a big region to pick out of. But really,
that's a public school, Cash. They live by a certain boundary they have to live
by. Right,
by.
exactly. But they do have the biggest reach of talent in terms of all the other schools. But with Prep, they can just pick whoever they want, and that's just not fair for a team like Meadville or any of those other teams to be playing them. So I think this has been a long time coming. I think it's a good decision by all those teams, and we're going to see stuff like that happen more. Prep needs to get some schools out there that will recruit to go up against them, but you're just not getting that in this region right now.
There seems to be a lot of factors today. What schools are merging, what schools aren't merging.
Right. No doubt about that. And the thing is interesting is those teams did that, and in basketball, fans of Meadville are excited because they get to play Prep twice. So football, they don't want to play them. Basketball, they're excited they're going to play prep twice this year.
And they have a chance when that
Yeah,
happens.
So, you only put
you're
5
going to
people
do
on a court.
okay.
You can only put 5 people on a court at one time, right? But that is interesting. You talked about August 26th, and I want to give a shout out to Armstrong. That'll be the first game Armstrong will be covering, and that'll be Cochranton at Maplewood. We talked about Cochranton. I don't know if Josh or anybody found anything about Maplewood Tigers this year.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with if anyone else wants to chime in, they can do after me. Maplewood is kind of in the same situation as Cochranton. They're a team that did relatively well last year, made the playoffs, but got absolutely destroyed by Sharpsville. But they're coming back, and they've got Wellman back. They lost Paralewski, and they lost Newfer. But they've got their top tackler, Jeb Parker, back, and they have a couple other guys back here or there. Plus, it's addition by subtraction. Eisenhower is going to take a step back from losing their players. Cambridge will probably take a little bit of a step back, losing Stafford, who was an amazing player overall. And that's going to basically leave it up to Maplewood and Cochranton to battle it out. So it's just kind of the same situation there. It's kind of between those two teams about who's going to clinch that last spot, or maybe both can get in. It just depends on how much of a drawback Eisenhower takes losing the quarterback.
Big first game for both of those teams.
Exactly.
Playing each other,
It's a pivotal matchup.
Yeah, early on in the season.
It's a tiebreaker game, basically.
Wow.
I mean, you want to win that game, and the team that wins that game comes out with the edge.
It's going to be interesting too, guys. I mean, look at the playoffs. Everybody makes them. And I talked to somebody. They told me it's not like basketball. Basketball, you host the first round. That's not going to happen. They're going to play all football games at a neutral site. And I think the reason is because not everybody has turf. And they want to put all the playoff games, if they can, on turf. So how many, like Meadville has a turf field, so that'll probably be used for like A or double A. We'll be playing Friday and Saturday. I'm sure the stadium rate is going to be used a lot.
The stadium, Edinburgh is always in the mix.
McDowell,
too.
maybe?
They always get a couple of games. And McDowell they got the Franklin Central Tech game that you referenced earlier, where Franklin upset Central Tech. Yeah, that game was at Gus Anderson Field as well.
Oil City has a turf field.
Oil
General
City's
McLean
been
has one.
McLean has one.
Yeah, Oil City's been ready for to host a game for a while now. I mean, they put in a lot of money into that facility.
That's a nice
They did a
facility.
wonderful job there.
They did.
It's unbelievable.
It is. That was one. It's funny too, is that facility, their track was one of the first all-weather tracks in this area, and believe it or not, they got money for that stuff back in the 60s when John F. Kennedy was president, and he was big on exercise and so forth. And Oil City wrote a grant or something. They poured some federal money into Oil City at
Of course,
that time.
Greenville now has artificial turf.
Greenville does.
As
I guess
does Hickory, so
yeah. Does Farrell?
not yet.
Okay.
I guess the question would be who doesn't. I get to go off the top of my head. I know Fort LaBeouf doesn't.
Well, Cochranton doesn't. I'm sure.
Titusville doesn't.
Pontiac doesn't.
Yeah, Connie.
What about Titusville down the road?
Yeah,
you ever
never.
seen them getting turf?
Nope.
Because money?
No, because it's tradition.
Playing the
You play in the mud and the grass, and it's to our benefit.
Okay.
Does Franklin have turf?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They have
Franklin has
turf
turf.
now. Interesting. Any other team you guys want to discuss here at the high school level that we haven't touched on? By the way, Chuck, your first game on Cool. You know who
Looks
you
like it's going to be Fairview at Conneaut.
And why don't you tell everybody how they can get games on Cool?
Okay, we'll be on every Friday night, either on Cool 1017 over the air, or you can get us on cool1017online.com. All the
And
games will be online.
Who's going to do the games with you?
Gary Patton will be doing with me.
Okay.
First
Good.
night he can't make it, so we'll get a sub in for the first night.
He gets out of
First night
jail
he can't
when?
make it, it's the second week.
And Luke, you'll be doing all the Titusville games?
Yeah, we'll do all the games. Looking forward to it. Streammedia.tv. You can watch them there. Armstrong's going to run some of them, and we'll be on the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network on the Titusville side.
And why don't you tell us who your broadcasters are if you know?
We have Jim Bodemer and Steve Bodemer. We'll have Bill McCrillis on the wireless mic, and I'll be producing.
You get the Bodemer show.
Bodemer and Bodemer show.
I'm liking that too. And Ray, you'll be doing McDowell.
Yeah, it'll be on the TuneIn radio app on the Keystone Sports Network. You just search Keystone on the TuneIn search engine, and you can listen to it on TuneIn application on your smartphone, or you can access it on TuneIn.com. The McDowell football website will have a link to it as well. So
Who's your first game?
that'll be a home game against Warren Howland out of Ohio.
And we look for big things for the McDowell Trojans as always in football. Okay, Meadville once again opens up the 26th at home against the Central Tech Falcons. That ought to be an entertaining game for both teams. Both teams have high-powered offenses, and Tech has a great running back too, if I'm not mistaken, Ray.
Well, I know they graduated Eddie Leggett, but yeah, they they've been with that offense designed the way it is, running that old, a lot of people jokingly call it the World War II offense with that single wing with the direct snap. But they did throw the ball a little bit more out of it last year, so they've become a stable. They generally seem to bring up kids that you might not think at the beginning of the season, and all of a sudden there's this freshman in there streaking down the sideline. Rob Matz has done a really good job there. And what's interesting, like about that situation, is what's going to happen to the Erie City schools possibly in the next couple of years.
What do you think?
I don't think the superintendent was bluffing when he said that if the funding didn't change, that he would look at the possibility of closing all 4 schools. And if that happens, then you've got McDowell, Prep, and then county schools in Erie County absorbing the players from those schools.
What I heard is, I heard a couple things. McDowell, people didn't want anybody from the city, but I found out that they can't say that. The state will say you will
and to prove that theory wrong, Brian Williams, who you remember on the basketball court, was a great player for Strong Vincent. He is transferred to McDowell, and he will be playing defense for McDowell this year, and I'm sure he will probably find a spot on the basketball team too. And you can't really blame some of those kids in the city if they have the option right now with all the uncertainty and the cloud hovering above that entire situation. And anybody that watches the news here, even throughout the county, has seen Jay Badams on television talking about how that federal funding system has not changed since the early 90s, and the Erie schools are in decay. I myself think that if they did something along the lines of Conneaut, where you had just one high school, athletically they would be terrific in all sports if you had all those players, and you could draw them from Collegiate Academy as well to go there. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a situation close to me because my daughter goes to the Erie School District at Deal Elementary. So,
if they don't close them all, maybe they'll start by closing one and see how that works.
Yep,
and
quite
so
possibly.
Forth. I think you're going to see more schools combine. A big joke around this area is if the Bulldogs and the Cardinals will ever combine, I guess people would probably be shooting guns at each other if that happened. But I think they're going to
look at these numbers, Mike. I mean,
you're going to have to look at that someday. I know people don't want to hear it, but someday you're going to have to look at that. What about Titusville? Are there any schools around Titusville that they would ever combine?
We were talking about that. I mean, Titusville, you're 40 minutes from Meadville. You're a half hour from Franklin, 20 minutes from Oil City.
Kind of hard.
It's kind of hard, yeah.
Tough, yeah.
But the numbers are getting smaller. Fewer and fewer kids are coming out.
And I think one of the reasons is too. Somebody touched on it too before about concussions. Talked to a lot of parents that really don't want their kids playing football right now. So that's going to decline. And you might see some schools in this area, and we talked about Sagertown right now going through a tough time, just eventually dropping football. Maybe just don't have football as part of their athletic program anymore.
That district could merge too sometime.
I've heard that's a possibility too, that maybe someday that could happen. But you talk about being on a bus forever.
Oh my goodness.
If you're going to combine the schools, that's a problem too. Guys, small college football, so we get Jim to talk a little bit. Allegheny, the guy that been there for a long time, a class act, one of the nicest people coaching ever, a winner in every sense of the word, Jim, not only on the field but off the field. Coach Matlack steps down after many, many years. Ray got to know him real well too, and he would eventually, what a class act he is.
One of my all-time favorites.
And I will say this, Vic and I were talking about it a couple weeks ago, Jim and Ray, and did Coach Matlack get dumb the last couple of years, or was there some other thing that went on down there? Because he wasn't the dumbest guy, and he pretty much knows the game.
Right, yeah, you don't forget how to coach like that. He was a great guy. I think it could be a factor of a lot of things. I mean, the conference has gotten very good. You see that week in and week out. Before you knew your Wabash, Wittenberg, Ohio Wesleyan were going to be tough, but now you have, Hiram's going to be above 500 now. That's the team you always look to roll over. I think that has something to do with it, and it just, you can't, sometimes maybe the kids just don't come. That, it's all in recruiting. Sometimes you just can't land those big fish. That might have something to do with it also, but
so Allegheny goes out and gets a new coach. Tell us about him, Jim.
BJ Hammer. He came from, that's a great name for football.
I love that name for football. Put the hammer down.
He was the defensive coordinator at Wabash for the last 5 years. And
we know how good they were.
They were an incredible power. I think right now even they're ranked 6th in the country. They made it to the Sweet 16 last year. I think they were 12-1 last year. And his defense, I mean, they gave us fits. It wasn't just us. They gave a lot of teams fits. So he actually played at Wabash. He was a 2001 graduate, I believe, defensive lineman. He was All-American. I mean, he looks the part too. He's a tough guy, hard-nosed guy.
He's a young guy then.
Yeah, 36, 37, I believe he is. Yeah, but you know, he's made a couple changes, but nothing too drastic right now because, you know, like you said, Mark left the program in a pretty good place, you know, organizational-wise, staff-wise. A couple new hires on the staff as well. He brought one of his top players over with him, AJ Akinrabade. He played at Wabash for 4 years.
As a coach, he brought him over as a coach.
He brought him as a coach, yeah. He's going to be coaching the linebackers. Has a new offensive line coach in Justin Smith. And a new defensive coordinator, Randy Moore, who was actually the head coach at Hiram for 6 years, and did a pretty good job over there at Hiram. Got them from, you know, going 2-8, 1-9 every year. Now they're 6-4, 5-5, picked in the middle of the pack. He came here as defensive coordinator, so kind of a new staff. He did leave the offensive side pretty much alone. Kyle Derrickson's back as the offensive coordinator. Mike Dietrich's back as running backs coach, and we have Ed Raby is back on the defensive line, special teams coach. They're expecting 70 recruits, freshmen coming in for camp, and I know that the hope is, you know, a couple of them can play.
When does camp start?
Camp starts August 13th, and they have a scrimmage at Geneva August 24th, and their first home game is September 3rd under the lights against Teal. Community Day at the Robertson Athletic Complex, so free admission for everybody. We're trying to get the word out around the community. Going to talk to some local youth football organizations as well. But you know, talent-wise.
And by the way, if you have a chance, get up to Robinson Field that night. What a great atmosphere! Saturday night football, Teal against Allegheny, and Teal has a new coach too.
Teal had a battle of first-year coaches. Dan Bloom, he came from Mercyhurst.
Yeah.
So you know, we've played them the season opener the last 2 years. Both games have been pretty tight. Teal's come out on top, but yeah, 2 first-year coaches under the lights. I know you saw the new turf was up there last year. Good-looking stadium.
So we're going to see a young Allegheny team.
Yes.
A lot of freshmen.
70 freshmen. I know a lot of them will be in key positions as well. The offensive line is the big spot. Offensive line and wide receiver. They're very happy with 2 of the running backs that are coming back. Jake Wilson, Chuck, I know he's had some pretty good games, and Tyler Bala, he was used last year as a kick and punt returner. He was an all-conference kick and punt returner. This year he's going to be playing running back, so he'll get a lot of time. Very shifty guy, about 5'6", 200 pounds. He just bowls you over, but he's pretty fast. Interesting, too, they have 2 quarterbacks who both appeared in every game last year, in John Nigro and Logan Lee. Nigro's been in pretty much every game for his entire career, starting as a freshman. Smaller guy, athletic guy. He can run.
Quick.
He's very quick, yeah, so that helps with the offensive line performance we've had the last couple of years. And Logan Lee is your prototypical drop-back quarterback, 6'4". He's got the arm. But again, the problem last year was the line. Had some issues on the offensive line. And this year they've lost, you know, Tyler Smith was a big-time receiver for the Gators the last couple of years. Lucas Morton, he was another one that saw a lot of time. So 2 big receiving targets are gone. They do have a starting tight end back in John McFarland, so that'll be a nice safety blanket for both either John or Logan. And like I said, the 2 running backs. So the offense, they're going to be really looking for line play, and I think it's going to be a couple freshmen, because I believe the only one coming back who saw a lot of time last year was Connor Riley. He was a nose guard. Yeah, he was a guard, 315 pounds, but I know the last 3 starting linemen to graduation, so that's going to be wide open.
I also think, too, that if the Gators can get 3 wins this year, it's a very successful season when you're playing a lot of young people, new system, new coaches. You know, Chuck, once again, cool to be providing the games on the radio. You get to go to short road trips.
Oh, the short ones, yes. We see one to Indiana.
There's only one overnight this year, though.
That's right. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have them all on Cool 101.7. Forgot to mention also the Cool app we have now. So go and pick us up onto the app.
That's a cool app.
That's pretty cool.
That's right. That's a very cool app.
And Chuck, who's doing college games with you?
And, of course, I'm going to have Stephen G. Fulmar be doing those games with me, as he's done the last couple of years. He does a great job.
He does.
And football.
And then Steve does the Greenville games down at your other
Yes,
station?
he does, right.
Right. So you check out the Gators and also Gator TV.
GatorsTV.com, yep. Right off the website. A new website, which is going to be unveiled August 22nd. We're excited about that. And a lot of work for those guys in the sports information office, but it'll be worth it, I think, when it comes out.
Good thing.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He does. And
Ethan is good, yes.
GatorTV.com, all the home games will be myself and Professor Vic Kress.
Yep. Yeah, and the schedule, it's kind of interesting. So they open with Teal September 3rd.
Then they're on the road
Then they have 3 road games.
Yeah.
And then they're back home for 2, Oberlin for homecoming on October 1st. DePaul the next week, and then away for 3 more weeks, and then they finish with 2 home games on November 5th and November 12th against Ohio Wesleyan and Wittenberg, so nice and wintry for those teams coming from Southern Ohio.
That's right. That's what I was thinking.
Remember a couple years ago, Chuck, that last game of the year, they were scraping snow off the bleachers against Witt. You know?
And Jim, you know what that means? The last home game when it's real cold, would Vicar be wearing?
He'll be wearing the fur coat.
That's right.
Or he'll make a an unexpected trip to Florida that week.
That's
too.
right.
That could happen.
Okay, Gannon. Right, what do you know about the Gannon Knights this year?
Gannon had high expectations last year and then got hit they had some graduation losses on the offensive line, and they got hit with injuries, and then their quarterback Liam Nodler, who we all know the career he had there, he was actually getting some looks after the NFL draft. He didn't get drafted, but he was getting looks by some NFL teams. He's 6'7". But they just said they ended up kind of limping at the end. They finished 6-5. The PSAC preseason poll just came out, and looking at the West, you have IUP. It'll go in this order: 1 through 8. IUP, Slippery Rock, Cal, Clarion, Gannon picked to finish 5th. Mercyhurst 6th, Seton Hill 7th. Edinboro, with a new head coach, picked to finish 8th. They've had some rough years the last couple of years. In the East, I'll just give you the top 3: Westchester, Shippensburg, and Bloomsburg. Kind of the usual suspects on the eastern side.
Excuse me, what did you say Clarion was preseason then?
Clarion was picked 4th. Now, you remember, they were picked to finish in the bottom last year, and they surprised a lot of people. I mean, they came into Gannon. It was a game I did on the video feed on GannonSports.com, and physically just dominated them in the second half of that contest.
They've made a big advancement there, Clarion. They used to be the patsy of the West for many, many, many years. Look if they won 1 game, and that usually was against Lockhaven. So Clarion's really improved a lot of the Golden Eagles. Now the Gannon Knights. What do you think? They have a shot to win that West? Or is IUP the team?
I think this might be a middle-of-the-road year for them as far as they had to go back and reload. They do have some good players coming back. The quarterback position is going to be a bit of a question mark. Zach Phillips is the most experienced one coming back. He saw some playing time last year when Liam Nodler was injured. In fact, there were some games where you could visibly see Liam Nodler limping around, and they would put Zach Phillips in and run an option-style offense with him because of how athletic he is. He doesn't have the size, and I don't believe that the arm that Liam Nodler had, but they were able to do some things with him as an athletic quarterback. So that's going to be a battle in camp. Tyler Johnson, a Northeast product who has seen some good reps the last couple of years, running behind the likes of Brock Jones, who's another great player that Gannon's going to miss on the offensive side of the ball. So we'll see. You never know. Maybe they'll end up being like the Clarion team was last year, where everyone was picking them to finish in the bottom half, and they surprised people. Mercyhurst, same thing. A couple of years ago, it was 2 years ago, they started 0-4 and then ran the table and almost won the Western Division, running the table. Marty Schetzel does a terrific job. And the new head coach at Edinboro is Justin Lustig, who was an assistant at Ball State, played high school ball for Cathedral Prep in the mid-90s, and we'll see what he can do at Edinboro. That's kind of, I think, similar situation that Allegheny is in. You have a proud program that's fell on some hard times that's going to try and build that program back up.
That's interesting. The three closest college schools all have new head coaches, too, Allegheny, Edinboro.
Could have a pipeline to prep, though, recruiting.
Very well. And he was a good player there in the mid-90s as well.
That's not a bad thing if you can get in the door and help recruit out of prep. So we got Mercyhurst, Gannon, Teal, new coach at Gators. A lot of excitement up at the Hill. What do you guys think? Any other local college teams here, Josh?
All right, well, Slippery Rock's the one that I was really looking at, and they lost their starting quarterback last year. Now, that whole job is completely up in the air. I've talked to a few of the officials in the athletic department, and they say they have really no idea what's going on over there. But they do have Shamar Greenback, and he's the second all-time Slippery Rock rusher. And they finished pretty well in the PSAC last year, made it to the D2 playoffs, and they're projected to be the second-best team again. They did lose some guys on the offensive line, but as we know from history, Slippery Rock's pretty good at getting players to play on the offensive line, and they did just get a transfer in, so that should help a little bit. Defensively, Marcus Martin's their top defensive end, and he's back, and he should be playing pretty well overall. But the real interesting thing that I see here is Slippery Rock got a Pittsburgh transfer. Titus Howard played off the secondary. Now, we never know how those guys are going to play. Sometimes those D1 transfers can end up being really good with the new competition, or they can just be, meh. So we'll see what Titus Howard does, but there's definitely some optimism in the community right now for the Slippery Rock team, and being picked second overall in the PSAC, I mean, they should probably finish around that area, and we'll see where they can go from there.
You know, it's interesting about Slippery Rock. Even before I came to this area, when I was a youngster watching the one Saturday college football game that ABC would, they had a scoreboard show. They always give the Slippery Rock game.
That's
No
right.
matter who they played, they gave the Slippery Rock score, because Slippery Rock has a following throughout the whole country. And I think it was 5 or 6 years ago they got to play a game at Michigan State.
It was last year.
Last year,
2 seasons ago.
2 years ago they played at
2014.
the Big House. So yeah, they're a national known product in football, and
They've had some NFL guys. Brandon Fusco, who played for the Vikings for a little bit, and I think he's still on the team. He's a Slippery Rock grad.
that's right.
I've seen Howard play at Pitt. He's legit. I've seen him. He played at Clairton High School, probably the best small high school in the state in the last 10 years. Howard's legit.
Why does he leave Pitt and go to Slippery
Yeah,
Rock?
that's the
Academically?
Could be, yeah, could be. Maybe he didn't like Narduzzi because Narduzzi's a new coach down there. But I've seen Titus Howard play. He was with the Tyler Boyds. He's like that class of characters. They have another guy, Witherspoon. He plays at Pitt. They were pretty legit. So I think Howard could be quite an athlete in that conference.
You know, it's another. First of all, the PSAC is the biggest conference, D2 conference in the country. And in all sports, it's a great conference. Whether it's football, basketball, baseball, girls and basketball, lacrosse, whatever it is, they have a great conference, the PSAC. The other thing I want to touch on real quickly, and we didn't touch on this before, is the Pitt-Penn State rivalry is going to get renewed. And they're going to start playing each other again. And I think that's great for recruiting in the state of Pennsylvania. When they did away with that rivalry, to me, it really upset me. I'm glad, even so one's in the Big Ten, one's in the ACC, but find a week every year to play each other. It's great for the state.
It certainly is.
And
No reason to have ever broken that up.
exactly, Chuck. And people look forward to that. The alumni on both schools, they go crazy. And, Pitt plays now at Heinz Field. Penn State Beaver Stadium is second to none.
It'll be great to see James Conner back too.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yes.
Everyone knows a McDowell graduate, and he's actually.
How's he doing?
He did the last year. Did the coin toss at the
Right.
McDowell Cathedral prep game, so it was nice. But you talk about someone who is always gracious with his time. He rarely denies any media requests. He's just a fantastic story. He even had a story out in the Players Tribune that Derek Jeter put together a couple years ago after he retired, that you've seen a lot of players writing articles to. He got one in the Players Tribune. He's just a class act, a great representative of this entire area, and it'll be fun to see him back on the field.
Talk about James Conner. Eric Berry of the Chiefs went through the cancer thing. Remember that? And James Conner was flipping through and caught the Ellen show. And James Conner was on. So I'm listening to James Conner. She's talking to him about all the things he went through, the cancer treatments and everything. And she goes, just like you said, Ray, she says, I've heard how positive you are with young kids too, and so forth. She said to him, what inspiration you get? He goes, well, believe it or not, he goes, I got a call when I had this diagnosis from Eric Berry of the Chiefs. And he told me to hang in there, and he called me throughout my process. And she goes, wow. He goes, I never met him. Well, of course, they got him behind stage. So he's saying, I never met him. And all of a sudden he starts walking, and the people in the stands are starting to cheer, and he's like looking like, what are they cheering about? And all of a sudden she says, turn around, James. And he turned around, and there's Eric Berry, and they hug each other. And Eric said, and when I read the stuff about you and how good of a character person you were, I knew you were the type of person I wanted to call. So I thought that was pretty cool that an NFL player of his stature took time out to call James Conner, who's from northwestern Pennsylvania, McDowell High School, as Ray says. And you're right, James is a class guy, and we wish him nothing but the best. And I think he's got a chance to go to the next level.
Oh, yeah, he's one of the best running backs in the ACC by far. That's the thing, it's incredible. And I heard Coach Narduzzi say, you can't tell that he did not play last year. He goes, you cannot tell that we missed him at all. It's incredible. So.
Yeah, and that's huge. Now, the interesting thing is how he's going to respond to the treatments, how's he going to feel once he gets back on the field. But the good thing is, one of the silver linings, he's young enough to the point where he can come back from this and he could be just fine. He could end up being just as good as everyone projected him to be, and even be an NFL-type player.
Coach Hancock said to me this morning, he said he as a coach really fits in with the coaches here in this region that we have this year. And when you hear stories like that, I mean, that's what you get from these coaches up here.
That's right.
It's not just about the game, it's about life.
And there's no doubt about that. And, you know, one of the things, you know, Meadville's been lucky. They've had some good coaches in the past and in the present now. You know, I think of Coach Achenbach, who Ray got to know very well. Not just wins and losses, but get them ready for their future. Coach Collins, who's taken over now, the same thing. You know, Meadville has 2 state cops on their staff, so the kids don't mess around too much. Your defense coordinator and your head coach is a state cop, and Coach Collins is all about the kids, not just wins and losses. One person I forgot to mention for Meadville that could be a key to why the defense could be a lot better is they're getting back Julius Ream, who was hurt the first series of the first scrimmage last year, was lost the whole season. This kid will push for playing time in the backfield, but he will start a corner. The kid's a ball hawk. He has great genes. So Shane Ream, as we all know, is one of the best players out of Allegheny College, is in their Hall of Fame. Great star for Meadville too, and that's his dad, and that could be a key for Meadville. If they can keep their first 12, and I say 12 because they have a substitute that's going to come off the bench and play well on defense, their defense, Chuck, could be a lot better. Yes. And when you play teams like Cache, Oil City's gone down a little bit as far as throwing, you got to protect against the pass.
No doubt about that.
That's been Meadville's bugaboo for the last, Ray, 5 or 6 years. I mean, I did the DuBois game last year, but the year before that, Ray and I did the Warren game, and I thought that was a lot, 79-75.
Well, it was a couple of years ago. I remember I was going back and looking at my notes, and it was a ridiculous amount of touchdowns they gave up. That was 50-plus yards or more in both defensively and special teams play. Special teams play has been terrible too, and that's another thing.
Oh my God, special teams play.
Actually, the kickoff team got better last year.
Yeah.
We didn't give up a touchdown every 3 kickoffs like we did the year before.
You know, Mike, I'm jealous of you and Ray, because when I was interning with you guys, we had that Meadville team that wouldn't score any, and as soon as I leave, that's when they get on ESPN and Journey Brown rushes for 10 touchdowns.
I just know our game ended. We got the last part of yours, went to bed, woke up in the morning, and still listened to the rest of the game.
We were doing our game, and every time somebody had the ball, one play they scored. The score kept going up, up, up.
I was totally exhausted after that game, and you know, you usually do a wrap up. My wrap up was Meadville 1. See you next week. It would have took 2 hours to do the wrap up.
2.5 hours away.
Just to do the scoring would have been enough.
That's what I mean. It would have been a scoring. It would have taken another hour. So I said, you know, that's enough of that. But
getting back to the coaches you were talking about, Mike, Coach Achenbach, I remember he had going when he was at Sagertown, built that program up, had him in the District 10 playoffs.
Oh yeah, and
fine job.
And he talks about everything when he coaches too, and I think Coach Collins has picked this up, and he has. One of the favorite story about Coach Achenbach was he's playing Titusville, and the game's over. I don't know if he won or not. I might have won that game, but he tells his kids, go over there and acknowledge the band for coming. And the football team went right over to the band, took the helmets off, thanked the band. And that's what he always did, is you thank the band and the cheerleaders for coming, because they're an important part of this program. And they are. If you think about it, folks, in high school football, it's about the football players, but it's also about the cheerleaders that are excited. It's about the band members that come and perform, all the parents and grandparents that are there watching us people. You know, Luke, you and I have talked about this before. Ray, same with you. Northwestern Pennsylvania is cool in that regard. That Friday night, the community support their teams, and mostly everybody's at a football game, high school football.
That's what you expect. Yeah. You take any one of those elements away,
that's
and
right.
It's not the same.
It's not the same, and that's why it's an awesome thing. And you know, and I have fun. Luke has fun. I know Ray has fun. Josh had some fun. He'll be getting a lot more because he's going to get into this field. And he'll probably be working for ESPN someday. So remember, I'll be young. Chuck, how long have you done high school football here?
It'd be 46 years.
I remember coaching the first year Coggan started football, Chuck. We're down there starting a program, and you even did one of our games. And, you know, we took a pounding in the beginning, but you were down there doing the games.
Well, one time, of course, we did the Saturday afternoon.
Right?
Yeah, that was VCC.
Yeah, we did Saturday afternoon game.
Saturday afternoon game. We were up on the roof at times. That was a nice thing. We were up on the roof.
That's right.
Beautiful autumn afternoon on a Saturday, and that was just great. Sort of miss doing a Saturday game once in a while.
But what do you like about doing high school football, Chuck? You've done it for so many years.
Well, just being out there, you know, with, you know, the plays, the thrills, the fans get into it, you know. It's not like the pros, you know. It's just all the kids, boy, every play is big. And especially if you followed that Connie team when they won it. In 2014, that was unbelievable.
Most exciting game you've called?
I think, without a doubt.
I listened to you on that game, too.
When you're taking on Prep, you know, and they were probably favorites to win that thing, three touchdowns.
At least
and they were turned down inside the 10-yard line at least 3 times during that ball game. And, you know, Cathedral Prep may have had the best talent on it, but Connie had wanted it more. And Connie had got it.
Most exciting game I've ever called is the Du Bois Meadville game last year. Ray, most exciting game you've ever called.
Whew.
And you've done some games in Ohio too, I know.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think, and Luke sitting next to me, it brings me back to when I first moved back to northwestern Pennsylvania and didn't have a job in the 2005 season. 2006, I was hired by Forever Broadcasting to do Oil City play-by-play on the now defunct WOYL, and there was an Oil City Franklin game. Before Franklin got the turf, the field was just absolutely trashed, and Oil City was 0-4, and they came into that game, and Franklin was winning 10-0. Oil City rallied. They had an interception return for a touchdown in that game, about 94 yards. I believe it was Dante Jones. It was a star tailback that returned the interception, and they ended up winning that game in overtime.
Luke, best game you've ever seen in
2 years ago, Carter Field, we played Grove City, coached by Sam Mowry, Titusville grad, and came down to a couple seconds left. You never know what comes out of, Tom Hancock, touchdown pass to Brady Corkland to win it. The homecoming, it was the perfect night. The fans rushed the field. It was incredible, and people still go online and rewatch that over and over. But it's everything that Chuck said, and it's high school football. You never know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter how a team's ranked. You just don't know with high school kids what's going to happen on a Friday night, and that's why we show up every week, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Well put, Luke. That's exactly right. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I think all our teams wish all the players and the teams good luck. Guys, thanks for coming on. Josh, thank you a lot.
Yep.
Chuck, thanks again. Luke, thanks. Ray, and Jim, as always, thanks. And again, Jim says the Gators are going to be back on track, right?
I think so, yes.
Looking forward to it.
Chuck's looking forward to making those trips. You've been watching Sports Close-Up on Armstrong.